Twitter and YouTube have censored a BBC documentary that was critical of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, raising all sorts of questions about the role of big tech in increasingly authoritarian societies, as well as now the biggest democracy in the world, in India. And so for a little bit of backstory, Kanchan Gupta, who is his title is Senior Advisor at the Indian government's Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. He posted that this BBC documentary that looks into Modi's role in the Gujarat massacre back in 2002 is, quote, hostile propaganda and anti-Indian garbage, unquote, and said that the Indian government, under new Indian kind of anti-free press laws, had asked Twitter and YouTube to take down links to the documentary, as well as the documentary itself, as well as any commentary kind of around it, and that both Twitter, under Elon Musk, and YouTube, owned by Google, had complied with this. Some Indian members of parliament even had their tweets taken down. Amusingly, I put that in quotes, 2 John Cusack tweets were blocked in India. You can still see the John Cusack tweets here in the United States and around the world, but Indian audiences would be blocked from seeing them. A number of Indian members of parliament attempted to get around it by posting links to the Internet Archive. And then rather shockingly, the Internet Archive took it down. So you couldn't even go through that way. They're now left to a Telegram audio channel, basically. The only way an Indian audience can now hear this documentary is through a Telegram channel. Elon Musk, free speech absolutist, but he has waffled on what his definition of free speech is relative to local laws. So what do you make of this latest development from Musk?
I think it's a very big test for Elon Musk that so far is not going well. And you have a big story on that exact question right now, what this tells us about how Elon Musk is looking at the platform. Ken Klippenstein tweeted about this, and Jack Dorsey liked Ken's tweet about your story. That sounds kind of meta. Right. Jack is liking Ken's tweet about a Ryan Grimm story, but I think it shows that there's some dubious decisions happening at Twitter headquarters, helmed by a supposed free speech absolutist that does have a lot of foreign business ties, lucrative foreign business ties, in all kinds of different pots on the stove. And for the reasons you've been raising over the course of the last year, basically, since Musk flirted with buying Twitter first, this could be a real problem for him.
Right, because he has all of these, his other companies have these other their other goals. Right. Tesla has been trying to get into the Indian market, and I was thinking this morning, I was like, man, I wish Emily were kind of a more doctrinaire, just straight up Musk defender, so that I could do an "I told you so" here. But you've been skeptical of Musk's approach in foreign countries for this exact reason.
China in particular. I mean, he had already failed the test in China before he took over Twitter by doing a red carpet ceremony in Xinjiang. When the Tesla factory opened there. We're really lucky, actually, to have a guest who can weigh in on this today. The documentary, by the way, BBC documentary, is called India, the Modi Question, and we're going to hear more about it right now.
And so Raqib Naik is an Indian journalist who's been covering this situation. Raqib, thanks for joining us. Can you talk to us a little bit about the relationship between the Modi government and big tech companies over the years? Because this is certainly not the first time that the Modi government has kind of pressured Silicon Valley to censor critics or to censor news reports, but it does seem like some type of a line was crossed here. This seems like it was kind of the most, well, I'll let you speak to this because there was even a raid by police of Twitter headquarters previously. So to say that this crossed a new line and setting that aside might be wrong. But how are people in India responding to this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has used his emergency powers to block access to the BBC documentary in India. And I mean, as you asked, I mean, this is not the first time that such kind of a crackdown on the content posted on social media has happened in India. It has been happening, and exacerbating over the past 9 years under his rule. But definitely the way Mr. Modi is handling the whole fiasco right now is unprecedented. And this is a direct attack on press and directly violates freedom of expression and the right to information. And I mean, see, we need to see this desperation to censor the documentary in a broader context, which is the G20 summit that is upcoming later this year. And Mr. Modi is using this as an opportunity to bolster his image both nationally and internationally, and is spending big money to get favorable coverage. But that momentum has been disrupted by the sudden release of this documentary that has rightly put the much needed spotlight on his murderous past. And his information ministry has sent over hundreds of requests to different social media platforms like YouTube and Twitter to censor and withhold posts with videos and links to the documentary. And unfortunately, the so-called flag bearers of free speech like Musk are caving to the pressure and complying with the government order. And honestly, I wonder if Musk's free speech absolutism was meant only for the global north and the far right, and not the countries in the global south. But it's not surprising to me his focus on making quick profits at Twitter makes it very vulnerable to pleasing the Indian government, as the country is one of the biggest markets for social media company. And it's not just Musk right now. Before, Facebook has done the same, and over the years they are allowing platforming of hate speeches on their platforms that target countries' religious minorities, especially Christians and Muslims.
And some of our viewers may not know much about the Gujarat massacre. Can you talk a little bit about what that was and what the documentary exposes as Modi's role in it?
Ryan, what happened on February 27, 2002, was that a train filled with Hindu devotees was passing through Godhra town in Gujarat state when it caught fire and led to death of 59 people. And the Hindu far-right groups and the state government immediately put the blame on Muslims, which was later disputed by an Indian government investigation in 2005. That said that the fire was an accident not caused by Muslims. Nonetheless, the accusations were enough for the start of an anti-Muslim violence, which resulted in killing of more than 2,000 Muslim men, women, and children, and displacement of another 200,000 people. And the BBC documentary on Prime Minister Modi is a damning piece of journalism that looks at what Mr. Modi really is, a bigot who has built his political career on fanning anti-Muslim hate, bigotry, and violence. And to be honest, Ryan, what has been told in BBC documentary is already known across India since 2002. But the new piece of information that this documentary adds is the findings of an inquiry conducted by the United Kingdom government right after the riots, without ifs and buts, holds Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of world's so-called largest democracy, directly responsible for slaughter of thousands of Muslims. And it was all pre-planned. The report says, I'm quoting from the United Kingdom's own report, that on one pretext or the other, the Hindu extremists led by militant groups like Vishwa Hindu Parishad were going to attack the Muslims. They had computerized lists of Muslim homes and businesses they were supposed to target, and which is quite telling of the fact that the government officials were aiding it. There was widespread and systematic use of rape as a weapon to target Muslim women. And to put it precisely, it was a mini Rwandan genocide, which had the seal of Mr. Modi. And there were police officers who filed affidavits before the Supreme Court saying that he gave explicit orders to police not to act and let the Hindus vent their anger. And in retribution, a few years back, Mr. Modi jailed one of those police officers under bogus charges. And I mean, it's also important to talk about the victims of the Gujarat 2002. Their wounds are still fresh. I have met the victims. Just this past October, I met one of them who had to take asylum in the UK, and the whole Indian judicial system has miserably failed them. Just yesterday, a court in Gujarat acquitted 22 Hindu extremists accused of killing 17 Muslims, including 2 children. And this past August, Mr. Modi's Home Ministry shamefully gave a go-ahead to the premature release of 11 extremists who were serving life sentences for brutally gang raping a pregnant Muslim woman and killing 14 of her family members, including her 2-year-old daughter, during the violence. And not just that, even activists spearheading the legal fight for justice and holding Mr. Modi to account were thrown in jail after Indian Supreme Court in June 2022 cleared Mr. Modi of complicity by ruling that there was no evidence against him. But Ryan, one thing I do want to make clear is that this documentary is also a stark reminder to the world that the person who they think can usher the so-called world's largest democracy in prosperity or turn it into a global power is a myth. Because politicians with blood of innocent citizens on their hand can only do one thing, that is oppress, divide, and rule. And that's what Mr. Modi in India is doing today.
Raqib, I want to pick up on one thing you said, which is that a lot of the Modi's involvement in the riots back in 2002 is pretty widely understood and known in India. So how then does this censorship decision, which is getting international headlines and is big news here in the United States, how does that play in Indian politics? Does that change Modi's standing? Is it a sort of political net benefit or a net disadvantage for him, a net loss for him? Just on a purely political level, how does this affect his political standing in India?
I think it won't affect him politically because right now he has a strong loyal base, and in 2014 when he was brought into power, it was because of his murderous past, because of his Islamophobic past. He was taken into power. He was brought to power, but I think definitely it will create a lot of noise internationally and within the country from the minorities, from the religious minorities, and from the victims who are still waiting for justice. But I don't think it is going to be a disadvantage for him politically. But as far as his support base is concerned, they are more emboldened. They are more. I think they're happy about what they see in the documentary, because this is what their ideology of Hindutva, Hindu supremacism, stands for. That is anti-Muslim hate and bigotry.
Mm. Well, Raqib, that's incredibly important context for the dystopian decisions made by Musk's Twitter and Google's YouTube to censor this information. I appreciate you joining us today. And that does it for us today. Emily, got anything else?
I was going to say, once again, there was sort of a through line, and we didn't do it intentionally,
right,
but of creeping authoritarianism on a global level, not just in individual.
Deeply dystopian stuff.
Deeply dystopian stuff that's happening from a collection of people who operate globally, right? So not just censorship in the U.S. or censorship in India, but people in the U.S. helping for there to be censorship in India of a documentary out of the U.K.
Right, and if people think that, well, I don't care about India, so, if the Indians want to change the Indian laws, then they can change Indian laws. Not my problem. Musk shouldn't be criticized for this. I think people need to understand that we're a connected world, and the same kind of corporate power currents and the same political currents that are coursing through India are also coursing through the United States. And if you think that you can allow the collapse of democracy and freedom of expression in India and it will not bleed back into the United States, I think you're mistaken. I think you should care about the right of Indians to freely express themselves and to share whatever information they want for its own right, on its own grounds. But if you don't, you should understand that it's going to come home at some point too.
And that's why the DOJ lawsuit that we covered earlier in the show against Google is so important. That's why reining in the abuse of the classification labels is so important. A quote from Rand Paul, he said, "I haven't actually been to a classified hearing where I actually thought I heard a secret." He said that just last night. I saw the quote and wanted to bring that because I think It all gets to the overarching theme of how people are using national security implications to abuse public trust and to abuse the system. And they're doing it not just in the United States, but as you said, on an interconnected global level. So we'll obviously continue to watch that theme as it develops on a daily basis.
Yes, we will. All right. And we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.